You name it, about how the IRS is a collection agency for the private, run-for-profit Federal Reserve that's, well, running this whole comprehensive annual financial report scam that we've just exposed. Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, more and more Americans are fighting this and coming out against the developments. It's time for you to join the team. Many hands make light work. The IRS is a criminal organization. The 16th Amendment was never ratified to give you the income tax. You pay your taxes to the private banks. It's called the New World Order. And now they want to THX 1138 you. That is, dumb you down 110%.
Well, we're here in Northern California, and a few weeks ago on my radio program, we talked to Joe Bannister. In fact, his story's starting to gain a lot of attention. There's going to be an article in Media Bypass, and he's been doing a lot of radio interviews with people that are interested in the truth of what's really happening. He also has a website that contains the letter that he wrote to the IRS Commissioner, Charles Rossetti. And again, his name is Joe Bannister, and he was a special Treasury agent assigned to the IRS to investigate people that were filing fraudulent tax returns or simply hiding assets. And thanks a lot for spending some time with us, Mr. Bannister. God bless.
Thanks, Alex.
Basically, just start out and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you stumbled upon the truth.
Well, I started out as a CPA. I worked in public accounting, and I decided that I wanted a little more excitement, and decided to become a law enforcement officer in the federal government. Well, the Internal Revenue Service is his job is to collect income taxes and some excise taxes, and the Criminal Investigation Division, which I was a part, investigates criminal violations of those tax laws.
And when did you start to, well, tell us how it all began. What made you first want to investigate the Internal Revenue Code yourself and not just take the manuals and the codes that you used when investigating tax evaders?
Well, in December of 1996, I was listening to the radio here in the Bay Area, and I heard a lady named D.V. Kidd come on the radio, and she started saying some very unbelievable things, like the income tax was voluntary, that the 16th Amendment was never ratified, and that that federal income taxes don't go towards providing revenue for the U.S. government. And I thought those claims were awfully outrageous, but she was talking about it on a radio show hosted by a man who I trusted, and that made me want to dig deeper and see what it was she was saying and what evidence she had to back it up.
Absolutely. And so, in 1996, you started investigating. How long did you investigate before you came to your conclusions?
A little over 2 years. So I basically, my investigation ended right about the time I was forced to resign.
Can you tell us that story and also get into some of the things that you uncovered that are historical?
Well, I'd say after a good year and a half, I basically in my mind came to the realization that all her claims were correct, that in fact the income tax was voluntary, although it sounds kind of strange to be saying that, because we all know that people go to prison, they lose their homes, they have their wages garnished. But the reason that the IRS constantly refers to the income tax as being voluntary is because of our U.S. Constitution and the severe limitations that are placed on the federal government's ability to tax us. So
there are only certain forms of constitutional taxation.
That's correct. That our income taxes do not, provide revenue as I always believed they did. It's more like a cash advance type system where the federal government borrows fiat money from the Federal Reserve, and then our income taxes are used as a vehicle to pay interest on that debt. Well, the printing of the money, another thing that I found out, which totally surprised me, was that they print the money and there's no value to it, and they, in a sense, print it and out of nothing. They make it out of nothing, simply because they have the power to to force us to use the currency.
And it's kind of like a rat in a maze. And we never question the maze itself, never think outside the box. And that's why you're rare. Well, more and more people are in government standing up. This is becoming more and more clear, but it's still rare in the IRS, Mr. Bannister, for somebody to actually pull back and see this. What was it like, let's say, a year into your studies? Because you say you studied for about 2 years before you finally made your decision with the evidence. What was it like about a year into it?
It was very difficult because I took the job thinking that I could use my financial skills to fight crime, go after the bad guys, and I did. You know, money launderers, drug smugglers. One particular case was even featured on America's Most Wanted, so I was really enjoying myself. So it really it shook my belief system to its very foundations, and it was really very difficult for me to continue doing the job and excelling at it, because my mental state was difficult, you know, to go to work every day, even though I wasn't daily, you know, arresting tax evaders or people that didn't file tax returns. I wasn't personally doing that, but I still just felt it was very difficult to just go through the day-to-day process of the job, knowing what I was finding out, and not
because you found out that you were putting people in jail for something that the very system itself was doing.
At least the agency as a whole was doing that, and I felt that sooner or later I needed to start speaking out publicly, because I felt, you know, clearly a tax can only be voluntary or mandatory, and if it is voluntary, then it is wrong and illegal to prosecute, harass, seize money from people who don't volunteer.
Where does the money go? They throw this fiat money out there. We take the money up, and correct me if I'm wrong, we put labor into it, we work to attain it, and thus they steal our labor.
In a sense, that's correct. I mean, for quite some time, I'd hear D.V. Kidd talking about, you know, the Federal Reserve and how we're slaves, and I didn't really understand what she meant. But when you really spend a little time and educate yourself on the way the process works, it's really very simple economics. And I don't have an economics degree or anything like that, but you can eventually see that when the source of the money supply is a bank and the destination of the money supply is a bank,
and the controller of the money supply is a bank, and the interest rates, that's total, complete monopoly. It's a money trust.
You basically have you can't get out of the slavery. You can't get out of the constantly increasing supply of money, which is another thing I noticed and never really thought about, is that although they constantly will tell you that we're trying to keep inflation under control, we're trying to minimize the effects of it, if you look at it over a period of decades, it's always going up. It never goes down or disappears. It's basically on an upward tilt forever and ever and ever. The economics of it, eventually, it ends up destroying the economy and the people in it.
You have to ask yourself, why would this global system want to do that? It's just all about power. It's modern colonialism.
Well, again, it's economic slavery, and it's something that it took me till the age of 35 to go out and do my own personal investigation to understand how it works. I never learned it at the university, didn't learn it on the CPA exam, didn't learn it in the Big 8 accounting firm, and certainly didn't learn it at the IRS.
That's right. You went to one of the biggest and best accounting schools.
Well, I worked 3 years at KPMG Pete Marwick, but I never was taught. I had to go out and learn it on my own, and luckily D.V. Kidd was on a radio station that I gave some credibility to. If I had heard her just on a street corner or at a meeting somewhere, I probably would have just kept on walking.
I mean, just basically, is there anything you want to say to the people in Austin, Texas, in Central Texas, the people that tape this show and send it out to friends and family as well?
I guess the only thing I would say is I've seen evidence of an orchestrated campaign of painting a broad brush over people like Alex, who really are telling you the truth. And I was one of those people that thought these were all kooky ideas, but I've come to realize that they are very true and very serious. And I'm very afraid for my own family, our own Americans' ability to make a living, to have a country that has a manufacturing base, to have a future. Our country is close to